Data is interesting, but data is only interesting and useful, really more useful, when there's a story behind it.
Welcome to TBR Talks, decoding strategies and ecosystems of the globe's top tech firms, where we talk business model disruption in the broad technology ecosystem, from management consultancies to systems integrators, hyperscalers to independent software vendors, telecom operators to network and infrastructure vendors, and chip manufacturers to value-added resellers. We'll be answering some key intelligence questions we've heard from executives and business unit leaders among the leading professional services, IT, and telecom vendors. I'm Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst, and today we'll be talking about how clients use TBR and how research is evolving with Peter Zaimes, Sales Director and University of New Hampshire lecturer. So Peter, you started as an analyst, moved into sales, now you're teaching at UNH. So what are some of the skills that you took from being an analyst and through your sales role that you now are using as a professor at UNH? Like the arc of that career, but also the things that you brought with you as you went from one transition to another.
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to is, I'm not a trained salesperson. So I'm really trained in quantitative analysis and decision making and things like that. So when I got into sales, I was able to use the language that an analyst would use when talking to a client on a sale, right? So it really came down to talking like they talk and getting a sale out of it, I guess, for lack of a better word. Then of course you polish your sales skills and things like that, and then as you get away from the data more and more, right, on a daily basis, then it becomes sort of more sales and less analyst, but you still know the questions to ask, what to listen for, the objections and things like that a client might have based on your understanding of that data and what some of their concerns are and pain points. Going into teaching, well, the performative part certainly comes from sales and being in front of clients all the time and, having to pivot and refocus your energy and efforts without, any notice or anything like that. But the quantitative piece of it, and I teach in statistics and business operations in the analytics department, that hasn't left me. But what I do is I bring a lot of that TBR focus to the classroom. So for example, I have project groups follow a company all semester long. It doesn't have to be a technology company that TBR might cover. But when we cover those companies, we take the operational and statistical concepts and say, okay, how does that apply? And a lot of it's around assumptions, just like we do here at TBR, right? When we're modeling something, well, we don't have the answer, we're modeling it, right? So if I'm using a forecasting technique, and you don't have all the numbers that go into the formula, for example, right. Okay, what assumption can we make that makes sense? It's not correct, but it's directionally correct, as long as we have the right context to go make a decision. And that all comes from the whole TBR world that I've lived for this long.
So is that what you use to explain to students? And I'm asking that question because I think it can sometimes be hard to explain exactly what we do. And I think if you're talking to students, maybe it's a little easier, but what is it that you say that TBR does that you think resonates most with students you're working with?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to data is interesting, but data is only interesting and useful, really more useful, when there's a story behind it, right? So I'll always say to students, and this gets to the point, and then I'll get there here directly. If you have a number and it's written down and it's calculated, and you say, is this number any good? Some ratio, a financial ratio, whatever it is. The answer is I have no idea if it's any good unless you're comparing it over time, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 quarters, or even better, or against a close competitor or two. That's how we start to know the data is useful and who's performing better than somebody else, right? So we do a lot of that in class. And again, that's directly from TBR. And how we describe, or how I would describe TBR and what we do, is we look at companies and we tear apart companies from a quantitative perspective, both KPIs, key performance indicators, and financials. But then we tell the story of why and also potentially how the company got from one position to another, or is performing poorly now when they were performing great before, or vice versa. So it's data-driven decisions in our industry, in the tech world, with that, very important piece of, how and why are they in that spot. So it's really about the relative performance quantitatively of the company over time, and the relative story of the company over time that marries up to those numbers.
Yeah, an analogy I've used recently in talking to students has been that especially if they're student athletes, they understand you watch game film of the team you're going to play. I'm like, that's essentially what we do. We don't provide game film on sports teams, but we provide game film to businesses to say, this is what they've done in the past. This is how they performed in these circumstances against this kind of competition. This is what you should look out for going forward.
Yeah, and I think and I think the recommendations piece is what comes from that, right? So they can take our recommendations or leave them, but we want to have at least an overall industry recommendation, if not an individual company recommendation,
Right.
coming out of that game film.
Right.
Because it's only good if you can use it to pivot, or at least confirm. If you're not going to pivot, you're going to at least confirm what you already know,
Right.
and then at some point pivot when the time is right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said a few minutes earlier, you talked about knowing how to ask the right question. I want to flip that around and think of it more from the questions that you're getting from our clients. So in the years that you've been doing this, I'm sure you've seen that the questions have changed a little bit. So I'm curious about both what has consistently been a question that clients ask us, and also what are some of the new questions that we're getting from clients that you didn't hear 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah, the consistent questions are always around top competitors. So something that's, tried and true and is never going to change, and is, buried in our data and insights, and whatever we have. What are our top competitors doing that we have to watch out for? What are we missing? And that could be a number answer, or that could be a story answer, or some combination of both. But that's always going to be. The other thing that we always hear is, which emerging companies are, kind of coming out of nowhere that we have to now watch out for, right? And it doesn't matter the industry, well, within tech, the part of the industry, or really the type of company. Everybody wants to know about their emerging competitors that they have to watch out for. Hasn't changed in all the years. Now, what's interesting, and some of the newer questions are really around, emerging technology. We've always gotten questions on, and it's like a new question every year when it's a new emerging tech. But AI has taken on a life of its own. So not only, are we getting questions around AI generally, but we're getting really specific questions about, types of AI bots that people are using, type of analysis people are generating with AI. What does the future hold when we are just trying to figure that out because everyone else is just trying to figure that out? And then how to monetize it. Well, I don't know. They don't know the answer to that. They're asking us. This is so early days that, yes, there's an answer from an opinion perspective, but is there really a direct answer to that question, around monetization? So many things around AI that it's just going in every kind of direction these days.
Do you see a parallel to that with questions that we used to get around cloud or any other particular technology? I feel like we've gone through a kind of a hype cycle with AI, and particularly generative AI. And on the other side of it will be all the questions you just brought up about the commercialization of it. But we did go through that with cloud, right?
We did. We went through it with cloud, right, to the point where even companies would not have revenue added up to their total company revenue, with what they considered their cloud-based revenue, right? So if you added together all your cloud-based revenue with everything else that you knew in the company, it would equal more than, say, the revenue of your company in total, because they didn't really know how to parse out what's considered cloud and what's just considered kind of, existing business that they now want to reclassify or something like that. Very much so with cloud. And, every company too, and this is probably happening with AI, or I know it is, it certainly happened with cloud, is the marketing hype. Mm-hmm. They would advertise capabilities that they didn't even really have yet, that they knew that they were going to have or wanted to have. And then they would sometimes get called on it, like, really, what are you doing for what client with this capability?
Right.
And sometimes the answer was, well, we're not doing anything yet, but we're just going to advertise it on our website. So some of the genesis of some of our product sets actually came from something like cloud, where cloud's a great example, where a market landscape talked about the market of cloud and who's playing in it, but it was too soon to monetize.
Right.
And a lot of, technologies go through that. Now cloud is very monetizable. It's very much not adding up to more than 100% of revenue. And it's very clear what it is, but it took, time, and it took iterations, and it took, a technology to evolve and develop, and our skills at TBR to evolve and develop to really model out what's real and what isn't in cloud. And I think that's going to happen with AI. We're already starting to do it, but I think that's a value add that we provide, is we're able to cut right through that and actually model out something that often the companies themselves don't know the answer to, don't know what their profitability is, don't even really know what the revenue is fully or where it comes from. Early days, they do now.
Right.
And we were getting a lot of work and a lot of airplay because of our capabilities to do that.
Right. And so you mentioned the evolution and development of both the market and the technologies, but also TBR and what we do and how we do it. So that's my last question. What's going to change? What is research, like what we do? What's that going to look like 10 years from now? How much are we going to evolve and develop? And what's the vision of TBR 10 years from now? What does research look like 10 years from now?
Well, I think people are going to become editors as overall with AI and what's happening out there versus content creators in original form, right? So I think TBR, when it evolves and as it gets down the road, is still going to be providing the same great insights and the same, non-public model data, or even, non-public within public companies, whatever that looks like. But I think it's going to be the way that we get there is going to be a lot different. The tools that we use are going to be a lot different, right? Certain things, and we're already seeing that here, just aren't going to be people jobs anymore. But the people are still going to have to, the great analysts are still going to have to pull that out and make decisions from it and make a recommendation to a company and whatever else. But I really think that, again, it comes back to the editor versus the creator. We're going to feed an AI system. We're going to get numbers back. We're going to get insights back. But we still have to go through that process of, changing and editing and making it consumable for our clients. It's actually pretty exciting. I don't look at that as a bad thing. I actually look at that thing as a really, really good thing. It makes your job different. Your meaning, it could be an analyst, it could be a data modeler, it even could be a salesperson, different, but confronting the same challenges and providing the same value.
Right. And I guess that last point, providing the same value. So our clients are still going to come to us for the same intelligence, data, insights, advice. They're going to still come to us for that. But how we pull that all together is going to change.
That's right. Yeah. It's how we gather, right? And then how we process and pull together and put into some kind of a deliverable. The deliverables will probably change too, right? As we go. So
let's kill PowerPoint.
Exactly nice. Right. But that's the thing. It's like people are scared. I hear in class all the time, what job is going to go away? Am I going to have a job? Whatever the job, if I'm an accountant or a financial person or a data analyst or programmer, some jobs might go away. Some jobs will go away. Some jobs will be different. And, some jobs are just going to be, the same sort of brain capacity that you need to analyze and process data, information, make decisions with, but the tools are just going to be different.
Yeah. Excellent, Peter. Thank you very much. We will have a chat again in a couple months and see where things are. See if AI has replaced us, but hopefully not.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks,
hopefully
Peter.
not. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Next month, I'll be speaking with Peter again, talking about key intelligence questions we'll be getting over this coming month. Tune in next week for another round of TBR Talks. Don't forget to send us your key intelligence questions on business strategy, ecosystems, and management through the form in the show notes below. Visit tbri.com to learn how we help tech companies, large and small, answer these questions with the research, data, and analysis my guests bring to this conversation every week. Once again, I'm your host, Patrick Heffernan, Principal Analyst at TBR. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week.